We're in the middle of chapter 125 of section 6.2 here. And the concern is with the nature of the enlightened person, the jivanmukta. And it's with reference to Vipashchit, who was a king who split himself into 4 individual beings. Rama assumed that Vipashchit was enlightened, but it seems that he was only half awakened. He was swinging in between. And I took this to mean somebody who is a spiritual practitioner. My own point of view is that liberation is a practice, it's something that's to be practiced. But I'm not sure that this interpretation fits here. We've got some fairly traditional views here. We're told that whatever Vipashchit had been attained through contemplation, not because he had reached the supreme state. The spiritual practitioner is one who has reached the supreme state, but who doesn't remain there. There's a constant going backwards and forwards. This is the practice of right liberation. Now, it is possible that liberation could be properly described as that state which, once reached, one doesn't go back again. And that's mentioned later on. So there's also that possibility. But whatever Vipashchit had been attained through contemplation. And this is one of the techniques that are used, and I think they're highly dubious. It's contemplating statements of wisdom. For example, all this is Brahman. So by contemplating it, it might become your reality. I'm very suspicious about this. All you're doing is rearranging your mindset. It's not realization at all. And by concentrating on statements of enlightenment, really is no surefire way of actually realizing the truth of these statements. Perhaps it will work, but who knows? Realization is something that either happens or it doesn't. It sometimes comes to those who don't seek it, and it evades those who seek it for quite a long time. So you just have to do whatever you feel you need to do. So contemplation doesn't get you there. And if it does, it's a happy coincidence. One of the other things that's mentioned here is psychic powers, siddhis. These are clearly a reality for the writer of this passage. But as I said before, I think we should just leave such concern to the scientists. Let the scientists establish the truth or not of siddhis. In those who have reached the supreme state, there is no ignorance or delusion. How can they have a deluded vision, and how can they see falsehood? If you've touched the supreme state, then everything is clear. The yogis who practice contemplation and who attain various psychic powers through grace or boons are subject to ignorance which is noticed in them. Hence they contemplate not the truth, but something which is other than the real. The pursuit of psychic powers has got absolutely nothing to do with inquiry. But sometimes it's seen as a sign of enlightenment, isn't it? In the previous paragraph we heard about signs of enlightenment and also signs of ignorance and bondage. And this is a problem if you're a spiritual seeker. How do you know that somebody's enlightened? How do you know that you're getting the truth from the source? So mention here is made of signs of ignorance and signs of enlightenment. But as the rest of this chapter makes clear, such signs are really quite useless. And really all you can do, especially if you're a spiritual practitioner, is turn to your own realization and take your cue from that. You cannot invest anything in a guru. There is something more. Even in the case of those liberated sages who are still alive, This is the jivanmukta. There is comprehension of materiality while they are engaged in day-to-day activity. When you're enlightened, you don't just sit there in perennial bliss, although that might be the case with some yogis, who knows. But the stories we've got in the Yoga Vasistha, after enlightenment, the individual goes and gets on with their usual activities. And that includes dealing with material needs. It involves working and eating and so on. Moksha, or liberation, is also a state of the mind. The natural function of the body adheres to it and does not cease. I think it's arguable whether liberation is a state of the mind. But we'll just press on with this. The point here is, though, that even once liberation has happened, the body still continues to function. In fact, the world still continues as before. One who is freed from ignorance or the mind is never again bound by the mind. Even as once the fruit has fallen from the tree, no amount of effort can connect it to the tree. The body functions as is natural to it, even in the case of the liberated person. But the consciousness in that person is stable and is not affected by the states of the physical body. So this passage is assuming that liberation is a once and for all condition. But there are many passages in the Yoga Vasistha which say otherwise, that liberation can be disturbed. For example, right back in section 3, chapter 117, to remain established in self-knowledge is liberation. When this is disturbed, there arises egotism and bondage. Consciousness is continually masking and unmasking itself. And the idea that it seems to be in a continual state of unmasking doesn't quite fit in with its own nature. But we have to look to our own experience here. And this fits in with my experience. Although I can see how it might be possible that liberation could be a once and for all thing. So we really have to go with our own experience here and not impose our beliefs on it. So this is a possibility. But the point here is that the body continues. The body continues with its needs and its business and so on. So it'd be quite natural for the liberated person to show that they are concerned about the condition of their body. And in this way they wouldn't be any different from anybody else. But it's the underlying consciousness which is different. The underlying consciousness realizes that that is the reality and not the body.